No one who spent his days fixated on anime and video games could have possibly imagined that this would happen. As soon as he entered the unfamiliar world, strangers seized him, bound his hands, and hauled him off without delay. Initially, he believed that being blessed by 4 angels meant he had been selected, as the hero fated to rescue the world. However, everything changed once the true hero arrived. Just a single, effortless blow from him, Ash was suddenly forced to revert to his original form. As an added measure, the man secured his wrists with a set of shiny silver handcuffs. It was only at that moment that he became aware he had been reborn as the head of a notorious cult. The character found themselves burdened with a long record of offenses, including abduction, homicide, theft, and several other illegal acts. Only a few days earlier, he had lost his life to exhaustion, but now he found himself awakened in an unfamiliar world. As soon as he opened his eyes, a large assembly of people dressed in black robes knelt before him, their heads lowered as they murmured prayers in unison. As he listened to their voices, he realized they believed him to be the most powerful being in their world. To everyone around him, beneath his composed face, he was already gripped by overwhelming panic. To make matters even stranger, he had been transported into the body of a person who shared his name, except the last part, Heath, was missing. Ash moved his hands and feet, carefully checking to see how well his new body responded. The sensation was indistinguishable from the real thing, leaving no noticeable difference whatsoever. The situation left him questioning whether he had somehow slipped into an alternate version of himself. So to avoid confusion, he chose to refer to the body's true owner as Heath. To Ash's disappointment, Heath had not bequeathed him the one thing he valued most, his memories. Ash found himself completely clueless about his next move. The figures in black robes lingering downstairs appeared respectful for the moment, but he knew that a single mistake could lead them to reveal his true identity in an instant. At that moment, the grand hall began to tremble with intense force. Amidst the chaos, one of the men dressed in black robes raised his voice, fervently invoking a plea for the Lord's arrival. Without warning, 4 luminous spheres, each shining in its own unique hue, suddenly descended from above. Ash's body collapsed to the ground, his knees striking the floor as if he had lost all control over his own movements. Within moments, the 4 glowing orbs surged directly at him. The red orb was the first to break the silence, declaring its dominion over countless stars. It bestowed upon the listener a mighty angel, one who commanded strength, valor, and unyielding honor, to vanquish every foe that stood in their path. After that, the blue orb drifted into view. The entity revealed itself as the ruler of tempests, rainfall, and snowfall. It bestowed upon them the Angel of Wisdom, an expert in strategy, transformation, and destiny, to help lead them toward every aspiration. Following that, the green orb appeared. It introduced itself as the everlasting, fiery core, bestowing upon the recipient the Angel of Life, a guardian embodying vitality, equality, and generosity, promising that their health would remain unwavering. At last, the pink orb revealed itself, introducing the spirit of dreamlike freedom. This spirit bestowed upon the onlookers the Angel of Joy, an entity embodying love, pleasure, and art, granting them an extraordinary, irresistible charm. As the echoes of their voices dwindled, Ash experienced a sudden rush of energy coursing through him. His thoughts became clearer, and a wave of exhilaration lifted his spirits. A subtle smile formed on his lips, as he realized how unexpectedly fortunate this mysterious and sudden journey had become. He had become the world's destined hero, shielded by 4 sacred guardians and surrounded by devoted followers. The path ahead seemed flawless: battle fierce creatures, grow stronger, rescue the land, win the princess's heart, and achieve the ultimate glory. Before he could complete his thought, a thunderous crash rattled the ceiling overhead. At the head of the group, a follower dressed in black robes shouted in alarm, announcing that the bloodthirsty hunters had discovered their location, and insisting that only the hero had the power to push them away. Ash emitted a chilly snort, instantly recognizing from the name alone that these bloodthirsty hunters amounted to nothing beyond expendable cannon fodder and easy experience points. With a dramatic gesture, he unsheathed the sword from his belt and filled with pride, proclaimed that no one could withstand the direction of his blade. He announced that the bloodthirsty hunters before him would be the first to fall to his weapon, and urged his companions to move forward. Before anyone had a chance to react, a deafening crash reverberated throughout the hall. The intruders made their intentions clear, declaring that there was no need for the others to move, as they would approach them instead. Ash's lips curled into a self-assured smile. Everything was falling into place, and Ash was ready to demonstrate exactly how a carefully planned demise unfolded. In a single moment, every one of the four angels bestowed their blessings upon him together. At that instant, Ash was overcome by a surge of strength so immense that he believed he could split the whole world apart with just one blow. He pondered over what to call his very first action in this new world. The panel depicted a sweeping arc shaped like a crescent moon, followed by a swift strike reminiscent of a thunder god's bolt. They decided it would be wiser to stay under the radar. He followed through with what appeared to be a straightforward motion of his sword. A powerful wave of sword energy burst forth, slicing directly toward the closest hunter consumed by bloodlust. Ash regarded the weapon in her hand, recognizing it as the void-splitting sword, and a wave of confidence washed over her as she marveled at the sense of power it gave her. In the following instant, the hunter consumed by bloodlust released a derisive laugh, signaling his satisfaction. A sinister smile spread across his face as he swept his weapon through the air, causing it to morph rapidly into a chain sword that stretched out for several meters. A crimson arc burst forth, cutting a vivid path along the length of the hall. Ash watched in disbelief as his sword energy vanished in an instant, his protective barrier tearing apart as easily as soaked paper. A single powerful blow caused the whole underground hall to fracture with a thunderous crack. The earth beneath his shoes crumbled and collapsed. Ash stared in disbelief as his assault fell apart with little effort from his opponent. He could hardly comprehend how such a thing could happen. The powerful impact was so intense that it forced the four angels to revert to their true forms. The angel known for strength was transformed into a fierce, menacing mantis. The guardian of wisdom decayed and turned into a massive, buzzing fly. The being who represented life dissolved, leaving behind only a ghastly, pale maggot. But saddest of them all was the angel of joy, whose form became nothing more than a revolting, foul-smelling mist. In the blink of an eye, Ash crashed forcefully against the wall. A sharp, burning sensation in his chest startled him into consciousness. He was nothing more than an inexperienced stranger in this unfamiliar land. He wondered why he had ever believed he could behave with such confidence without reason. He found himself unwillingly caught up in a conflict that was never meant for someone like him. As an experienced office worker, getting involved in such matters went completely against his nature. Ash remained motionless, lost in a haze of confusion. The clash beneath the hall had already reached its end. The hunters, driven by a wild thirst for blood, had easily overpowered the black-robed cultists, eliminating them all in a matter of moments. The leader advanced confidently, introducing himself as Westminster, a relentless hunter representing the Tribunal of Sin. He declared that the group stood accused of participating in 4 separate incidents of cult activity, along with several acts of kidnapping, murder, and theft. He produced a scroll and spread it open before Ash, revealing an official document from the Tribunal of Sin in City that ordered an arrest. The enforcer explained that if Ash disagreed with their actions, he could take his case to the branch or send a letter to the mayor. Before finishing, the man remarked on Ash's boldness, impressed by his courage. Despite not even possessing 4 Tier 2 Chaos trances as their own, the challenger still had the audacity to confront the formidable 3-winged opponent. As a small token of appreciation, a finely crafted set of silver handcuffs was presented as a reward. On his very first day, Ash had already made a difference in the vibrant city. That day marked the moment when he was taken into custody. Ash Heath was the name that belonged to the protagonist. Their age remained a mystery, lost to the fog of amnesia. Even their gender seemed uncertain, though there was a vague sense that they might be male. He considered the word race, and thought to himself that he definitely wasn't a dog. Standing just beyond the interrogation room, Amy fixed her gaze on Ash through the 2-way mirror. Annoyance flickered in her eyes, narrowing them sharply, as she grew increasingly frustrated by his casual demeanor. A man standing close by turned to the captain and questioned whether the newcomer was making light of the tribunal of sin. He doubted that questioning the man would achieve anything and offered to take over the task himself, mentioning that he had studied interrogation under a priest during his school days and had even earned a level 1 interrogator's license. The narrator observed with confidence that, invoking the power of the priesthood, they could easily get this person to admit to having wet the bed during childhood. Responded in a monotone voice, instructing them to destroy the license. He questioned whether they believed the Human Rights Act was merely ornamental. The group knew that if didn't get enough rest that night, they would be the ones facing the consequences. Amy, seething with anger and annoyance, let out a sharp click of her tongue. She wondered aloud why, after keeping the memory mage around for such a long time, no one had bothered to retrieve the criminal's memories. Kept his voice icy, insisting that the memory mage would not appear. He explained that the mage was unlike the others because he had witnessed the 4 pillar gods. Amy stopped moving as soon as she heard those words. Explained that it wasn't only him. No memories could be retrieved from any of the cultists, as the erasure of memories was a unique ability possessed by the 4 pillar god. More than a century ago, he took on a case that centered around a cult devoted to the 4 pillar gods. During the investigation, a mage skilled in memory magic delved into the thoughts of one of the cult's followers, only to fall under the cult's influence himself without realizing it. This was the reason the cult managed to survive, never fully disappearing. Amy stared in disbelief, struggling to process what came next. With no proof, no interrogation, and no way to uncover memories, she wondered if they were simply supposed to release him. She questioned whether there was an alternative plan, something more drastic. Responded with an icy tone, insisting that no extraordinary steps were necessary. He explained that a particular form of execution already existed for criminals of such extreme wickedness. The questioning was merely a formality, as the actual judgment would take place before the whole city at 8 o'clock on the evening of the 15th. A sudden understanding washed over Amy, prompting her to give her tail a quick flick. Turning away, she decided to leave the responsibility in his hands. Continued to observe Ash through the glass partition. The law mandated a break for the suspect if an interrogation exceeded 15 minutes, a rule that brought a sense of relief. Ash cradled a cup of water in his hand, his fingers drifting unconsciously to the spot on his chest where the wound had once been. The skin there was smooth and unbroken, leaving him both startled and unsettled. Observed Ash closely without uttering a word, carefully analyzing each of his actions. Ash's responses appeared completely sincere, as though he truly was nothing more than an ordinary man suffering from memory loss. In this world, the law allowed those suffering from depression to avoid punishment. However, demonstrating that someone had lost their memories would require retrieving those memories directly. They decided to let the matter go and shifted their focus to the next arrest, knowing that the trial ahead would be handled by the public. Within the confines of the cell, Ash experienced a deep, sinking heaviness in his chest, as though a weight was pressing down on his heart. He once believed he was the one meant to rescue the world. Rather than following a different path, he had transformed into the head of a cult, now eager to launch his own enterprise. He found himself relentlessly pursued by groups of heroes, each one seeing him as nothing more than a source of experience points. It was certain that he would be put to death. Their interrogators maintained a courteous tone, and the accommodations included complimentary food and a place to stay. Considering the modern advancements of this world and the unexpectedly comfortable prison cells, it seemed possible that the death penalty might have already been eliminated. As he silently rejoiced over his thoughts, an unexpected warmth surged across the nape of his neck. Suddenly, a luminous display materialized in front of Ash's vision. The message addressed him directly, stating that the city council warmly invited Ash Heath to attend the Blood Moon judgment as an honored guest at 8 p.m. on the 15th of the current month. The message reminded the recipient to pay attention to their appearance, informed them that an escort would be sent to bring them to the live broadcast location, and explained that they could leave the program by replying with TC. As soon as Ash glanced at the name, he sensed trouble was ahead. Without hesitation, he entered the letters TC on the keyboard. Without a second thought, she pressed the send button. The officer expressed regret as they informed the individual that they were now in custody and being questioned. All messaging features had been deactivated. Ash felt an uncontrollable urge to retort, wondering if that last remark had been intended solely to provoke them. He shrugged, surrendering any hope. The shining display in front of him was nothing more than this world's version of a smartphone. At first, he'd suspected it might be some kind of special advantage from being transported here. In reality, it turned out to be a fairly ordinary device. At that moment, he noticed something unusual. A well-known app icon appeared on his screen. It was Aurora's Magus manual. The character wondered in surprise how the mysterious object had managed to travel into this world, alongside them. In his previous life, he had been employed by a company called Aurora. The application he managed was the very one his group had assigned to him. At that time, he had only downloaded the demo with the intention of trying it later, but before he even got the chance to play, he was suddenly pulled into this world. Somehow, the mobile game had accompanied him into this new reality. The program had automatically appeared within the display of his mind. The thought crossed their mind, wondering if this unusual ability was the special advantage granted by their transmigration. Ash's heartbeat raced as the miracle activated, and Aurora prepared to unleash magic from the Magus manual. In the blink of an eye, a flood of crimson washed over the whole screen. He stopped moving, suddenly remembering that the network ban was still in effect. At the very moment when hopelessness began to take hold, a cheerful chime sounded from the screen. There was disbelief as someone noticed that the system had become operational once again. Unexpectedly, the game started running on its own. To Ash's astonishment, the sole features in the whole game that operated as intended were the gacha system and the microtransaction shop. He reached out and gave one a cautious tap to see what would happen. As expected, selecting the option simply brought up the recharge screen. Ash, filled with frustration, hurled the luminous device onto the ground and muttered angrily about the presence of a cash shop in what was supposed to be a demo version meant only for internal use, questioning if someone was trying to reclaim their paychecks through this move. He navigated to another menu and paused, eyes widening in disbelief. The realization hit him, summoning for the first time required payment. Outraged, he wondered who could have invented such a blatant money-grabbing scheme. He stopped for a moment, reconsidering his words. He admitted that, in fact, it was his company that had done it, deciding to drop the subject. At that moment, the device on the ground emitted two clear chimes. A message flashed, announcing that the system had been restored and the user had signed in successfully. As a reward, it granted a single source crystal. As a reward for newcomers, the user had been granted a voucher allowing 10 attempts to obtain operators. With every set of 10 tries, at least one operator was assured. Ash cocked his head to the side, pondering the mention of operators. He wondered if they were truly capable of fighting on his behalf. Deciding it was worth trying, he dismissed his doubts and resolved to give it a chance. Just as his finger hovered over the summon button, a sudden realization flashed through his mind, causing him to stop in his tracks. Placing his palms together, he offered a solemn prayer, silently appealing to the spirits of the earth to listen to his request. The character silently called upon Mother Earth, seeking her blessing. Invoking the name of God, a solemn Amen followed. Ash exhaled softly onto his fingertips, hoping the gesture would bring him good fortune. Without hesitation, they pressed the button to begin recruiting. He desperately hoped that summoning a new operator might turn his luck around. The outcome consisted of 2 stamina potions and 2 experience potions. Ash drew a beginner combat card featuring a fierce sword maiden and a simple wooden practice sword. Excitement sparkled in Ash's eyes at the sight, pleased to have finally received a worthwhile item. He swiftly accessed the stats page belonging to the sword maiden. She let out a scoff, unable to believe what she was seeing. Was all that writing really necessary? It turned out the girl was just an ordinary beauty, nothing special. She wondered where the so-called mad blade aspect was hiding. He frowned and forcefully closed the screen once more. He could tolerate the existence of characters, but the realization that he couldn't bring her into reality to battle for him left him frustrated. In his mind, he questioned the purpose of it all if he couldn't even do that. In just a few days, the protagonist would find themselves facing execution, merely serving as a number to help an executioner meet their quotas. The idea that someone expected them to log in every day to inflate the metrics of a mediocre game during their final moments seemed absurd to them. The starter unit wasn't ready for battle immediately, leaving players without much excitement. The design seemed so lacking that it made one feel as if anyone could have taken on the role of lead developer. While he was still venting his frustrations, his attention was drawn to a small red dot that had appeared on the Operator Management tab. A sudden wave of obsessive urgency surged within him, compelling him to tap it right away. To his astonishment, the only other person present was the Sword Maiden. He relied on a different operator, one known as /Apocalypse, who served as the final observer. This figure mirrored his appearance perfectly, even matching the clothes he had worn earlier. He noticed a note on the Sword Maiden's profile, indicating a 30% experience contribution. The boy suspected that helping the injured girl improve her skills inside the game might actually increase his own strength in the real world. He began to wonder if this strange opportunity could be his only chance to escape from jail. Fortunately, they had recently acquired several training items. Ash quietly admitted surprise at how thoughtful the training system turned out to be. It seemed clear that the system produced better training outcomes when the operator was in a good mood. He let out a weary sigh, feeling the weight of his predicament. In his mind, he acknowledged that he was as good as doomed, wondering how he could possibly spare any time to manage the emotional swings of a fictional girl. Quickly organized a comprehensive 7-day training schedule for the Sword Maiden. He commanded the Sword Maiden to dedicate herself to working diligently for him. At that moment, a notification appeared from the system, asking whether to unlock the unique ability known as /Apocalypse. It also inquired if End Watcher wished to permanently add the Mad Blade Sword Maiden to the Magus manual, warning that this choice could not be undone. Ash nodded in immediate agreement, and streams of code flickered rapidly over the illuminated monitor. He finished his task, and soon after drowsiness overcame him as he slipped quietly into sleep. At the same time, in a place 3 hours distant from where Ash was, events were unfolding. After completing her nightly routine, a young woman settled into bed early. She abruptly realized she was conscious within her own dream. She found herself on a tiny island she had never seen before. She glanced over her shoulder, taking in the scene unfolding behind her. A lifeless body lay with a sword embedded in its chest, yet oddly enough, there was not a trace of rot to be seen. She gathered some seawater in her hand and brought it to her lips to sample its flavor. They realized with relief that everything had just been a dream. She wondered why her dream featured the body of someone she had never met. She moved nearer, trying to see more clearly. She drew the sword out of the chest and caught her breath in astonishment. The weapon seemed flawless, as if it had been crafted with her alone in mind. She thought the body would fall lifelessly, but instead, it stirred with unexpected motion. Startled by the presence before her, she tightened her hold on the sword and silently questioned the identity of the figure confronting her. /Apocalypse introduced themselves as reassuring others that despite their ominous title, they posed no threat. He hesitated for a moment before continuing in a chilling tone that he intended to end the other person's life. Her posture grew more rigid as she silently demanded to know the other person's intentions. Crouched into a defensive stance, fingers curling around the handle of a sword, he declared that for the next 72 hours, the only way out of this place was to overcome him in battle. Failing that, anyone present would be forced to stay for the entire duration. Before she had a chance to reply, he had already begun to strike at her with his blade. In an instant, she found herself once again at the very spot where her journey had begun. She reached up to her neck, confusion filling her thoughts as she wondered what had just occurred. It seemed as though her neck had been slashed, yet she questioned if it was all simply a dream. Lips curled into a sly smile. In his mind, he reflected on the fine line separating dreams from reality. He believed that reality was nothing more than a collective dream, crafted together by many, whereas a dream was a lonely cage, fashioned by one's own hand. The brief 10-second pause had come to an end. In an instant, she found herself yanked back to where she had first begun. Let a sly smile cross his face, warning that gripping the sword firmly was the only chance to meet death with any remaining dignity. Remained unconvinced, and without hesitation, turned on her heel before plunging headfirst into the ocean. She wondered if anyone could manage to slice the ocean in two. His words lingered in the air, delivered with a steady, sharp tone as he declared that fleeing brought only disgrace and served no purpose. At that moment, stopped in her tracks. Swimming was a skill she had never mastered, and the sudden realization caught her completely off guard. Confusion filled her mind as she tried to process what was happening. Despite knowing it was only a dream, a crushing sensation made it hard for them to breathe. As soon as she emerged above the water, she drew in a desperate breath. Flung his sword forward with unwavering resolve. Refused to let go of hope. She convinced herself that she was only taking a brief moment to catch her breath, certain he would remain unaware. A sudden splash erupted as she was abruptly pulled back to where she had begun. She lifted her hand to her chin, confirming it remained in place, and remembered how he had cut it off during their previous encounter. She fixed her eyes on Watcher, her gaze sharp and intense. He curled his lip in a sneer, mocking the other's naivety for expecting to catch him without a weapon, even after witnessing so much loss. Lost her temper, glaring at the Watcher and silently condemning their utter lack of reason. At the very moment he believed, she was prepared to engage in a real battle. Fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around his leg, expressing her devotion and gratitude to the mysterious figure before her. She pledged her loyalty to him, vowing to follow wherever he might lead. The character pleaded for mercy, promising to comply and expressing a willingness to follow any instructions given in hopes that the torment would end. Smile twisted into something sinister, as he made it clear that absolutely anything was possible. His cheeks flushed a rosy pink as she gave a small, silent nod of agreement. The figure expressed satisfaction and commanded their opponent to try and overcome them in battle. In a flash, she found herself transported all the way back to where she had begun. Feeling embarrassed, stamped her foot on the ground. She couldn't understand why anyone would bother targeting her, especially since she believed she hadn't wronged them. To her, it seemed pointless for someone to spend their energy on someone as insignificant as herself. The world is filled with genuinely wicked individuals, and for anyone seeking to deliver justice, there are several offenders that could be suggested. She considered how, if he truly was the villain, she could easily direct him toward powerful, two-faced elites instead. After all, she was just an average college student, and hardly seemed important enough to warrant so much attention from someone like him. Lifted her hands in a gesture of surrender, her expression weary and accepting. She silently conveyed her willingness to follow any request, seeing herself as a fragile rose destined to be crushed, someone meant to simply go wherever life pushed her. They narrowed their eyes with suspicion, silently questioning whether they might have been unjustly accused in the past. In an instant, found herself returned to where she had begun. She wondered if making it through 72 hours in this strange dream would really allow her to escape. Watcher agreed, noting the absence of any clock in the room. While 72 hours might seem brief compared to an entire lifetime, Watcher explained, in the realm of death, that stretch of time felt endless. Watcher wondered if anyone could truly withstand the pain of dying over and over again for so long. The speaker questioned why the other person trusted their words, pointing out that escaping that night would not guarantee safety on the following nights or any night that came after. He moved smoothly into a position to sheath his weapon. Having faced death before, he understood that hoping for miracles was futile. However, rather than bringing back to life, she lifted her sword just in time to intercept the blow from. She declared that she had no other option and commanded the Watcher to act. In an instant, she found herself returned to where she had begun. She shut her eyes tightly, searching her memory for every moment from their fights. It became clear to her that possessed no magical abilities. In terms of strength, he was not superior to her either. She remembered tales of master swordsmen whose effortless swings sent chills down the spines of anyone watching. Just by standing on a hill, their mere presence could cause those lacking strength to bow in fear. In comparison to the legendary giants, Watcher was simply an exceptionally talented swordsman. However, when she witnessed his wounds heal in an instant, she was astonished. Curled her lip in a sneer, realizing with a hint of sarcasm that the duel was indeed fair. As soon as brief 10-second pause was over, she sprang into action and initiated the attack. She had observed for a long time that, at the exact moment each match concluded, the End Watcher instinctively rested his hand on his sword's hilt, readying himself to summon his strength. Her power radiated with overwhelming strength, but if she struck before him, the advantage of his initial attack would be lost. The battle continued, as they exchanged numerous blocks and counterattacks. After careful observation, she noticed a weakness in the way he was protecting himself. Moved with just enough speed to evade the deadly swing of the sword, escaping serious harm by a slim margin. He quickly responded by launching an attack aimed at her unseen vulnerability. Responded with nothing more than a chilly, dismissive snort. Her feet moved in an unusual, graceful rhythm. The move allowed them to evade the attack without difficulty. No one had anticipated this turn of events, not even Watcher. The speaker had been anticipating this very moment for a long time. She moved smoothly, positioning herself as if she were about to sheath her weapon. After facing defeat so many times, he smirked, thinking that even a pig would have memorized the enemy's tactics by now. Let out a piercing shout as she moved in, turning swiftly and delivering a seamless strike. She demanded the return of the reed and the eye, insisting they be given back to her. A sharp blade sliced smoothly through his chest. In an instant, the injury vanished without a trace. Hesitated as she wondered aloud if that would be considered a victory over her opponent. The Watcher responded with a composed affirmation. A look of relief briefly appeared on her face. However, he went on to explain that his previous experience involved using just a single sword. He unsheathed his second sword and held both weapons crossed in front of his chest, signaling that the first part of the battle had ended and the next phase was about to start. This time, there would be no brief pause to catch their breath. Still feeling groggy, slowly awakened to the sound of her name being called. Someone reminded her about an early class that day and asked if she was planning to join. She massaged her temples and pushed herself upright, noticing that was the sole person remaining in the dorm room. Glancing at the time, she realized it was already 7:30. She noticed something unusual about him that day, since he was usually awake an hour earlier, already busy applying makeup. Appeared exhausted, as she quietly suggested that she might have experienced a bad dream. Dismissed the concern with a casual gesture, certain that frightening dreams quickly slipped away from memory. She urged haste, reminding that being late to class would result in lost points. After that, she exited the room, remained seated briefly before rising to her feet. She quickly completed her washing and makeup, blending the two tasks into a seamless routine. Inside the classroom, her thoughts wandered to memories of the previous night. Nightmares were meant to disappear with the morning, yet the memory of this one remained vivid in their mind. The memory of landing a blow on the dual-bladed End Watcher played repeatedly in her thoughts. After a long struggle, the proceedings that determined her fate were finally over. His final remarks sent a chill through. Although the trial had concluded, he warned her that her true journey was only starting. Could tell that his words were anything but a blessing. His face grew stern as she silently vowed that the Apocalypse End Watcher would never take control of her life. After all she had endured to set things right, she was determined not to lose her newfound stability. At the same time, deep within the prison's basement level, someone occupied an extravagant suite. Ash let out a groan and pressed a hand to his forehead, puzzled by how exhaustion still clung to him after a night's sleep, as if he had just gone through a rough fight instead of resting. He noticed a recognizable red notification on his phone's game screen, and his obsessive need for order made it impossible to overlook. He pressed it immediately, showing no sign of delay. The Sword Maiden burst onto the screen, her excitement nearly overflowing. she celebrated the successful completion of the trial, announcing that the connection between the user and the Sword Maiden had grown stronger. Ash blinked in surprise, realizing that simply sending her into a trial could actually strengthen their bond. He flashed a self-satisfied grin, feeling relieved that his earlier preparations were paying off. With determination, he reminded himself to follow the plan and continue pushing Sword Maiden to train harder. Right then, while sitting in class, experienced an unusual ache deep within her chest. She responded to the teacher's question with composure, explaining that a magus is required to summon at least one spirit before entering the Void Realm. According to her, it is only by working through a spirit that a magus can unlock the gate of truth and gain access to the realm. Entered the world in a distant village, far removed from wealth and opportunity within the Star Nation. For someone like her to attend such a renowned academy for nobles was almost unimaginable. This achievement had been made possible solely because of the miracle bracelet provided by the government. She swiftly mastered every foundational course loaded in the bracelet, becoming the first person from her in 2 decades to gain admission to university. Upon her arrival, she was met with icy glares and ridiculing laughter from those around her. Despite her initial struggles, she soon became skilled in both makeup and fashion. In less than a month, she lost her strong countryside accent and remained diligent in her schoolwork the entire time. She appeared at nearly every event held on campus. Her frequent opportunities to serve as host steadily increased her popularity, turning her into an emerging celebrity. She quickly rose in popularity, with many people expecting her to become the 67th. She held onto a single conviction throughout her life. With happiness so abundant around her, she wondered what kept it out of her own reach. Once class ended, quickly made her way toward the entrance of the school. She noticed her mother waiting beneath the scorching sunlight. Noticed her mother waiting outside, standing in the direct sunlight rather than under the cool shade of a tree. Her mother greeted her with a warm smile, explaining that she chose to stay in the open so would see her right away. Reminded them once more that her name was, not, expressing her frustration as they apologized and admitted they had forgotten again. Took hold of her mother's hand and started walking toward the train station. She felt that, since her mother had traveled so far to visit, showing her the capital city was a must. However, her mother dismissed the suggestion, explaining that she had noticed a park close by during her journey and insisting there was no reason to spend extra money. Paid no attention to her companion's protests and softly guided her onto the waiting train. She had altered her name, realizing that in this place, even someone like a waiter could easily be named. This initial visit left her in awe as she took in the spotless avenues and the impressive height of the city's buildings. The city was filled with courteous residents, their lives illuminated by enormous LED displays that continuously projected advertisements around the clock. From that instant, she made a silent promise to herself. If she ever faced death, she wished for it to happen in this very city, next to the person she cherished. Reaching this place had only been possible because of her mother's help. As a child, she had watched her father spiral into alcoholism, his temper growing shorter with each passing day, until his dependence on drink ultimately claimed his life. His mother single-handedly brought her up, dedicating countless hours to support them. Because of her mother's relentless effort, was able to dedicate herself fully to her education. In her village, the majority of children spent their days laboring in factories, and when night fell, their only entertainment was watching Meteor Channel, the sole television station they could access. They spent their days moving quietly through life, never venturing beyond the boundaries of their little. Had secured a scholarship, and in addition, she was making some extra money through her part-time job. She made up her mind to ensure her mother experienced all the joy the city had to give. Before they knew it, the hours had slipped away, and the moment came when they had to say goodbye. The bracelet already held the return ticket information, allowing the wearer to simply scan it at the gate for access. As she watched her mother get ready to go, hesitated, a wave of uncertainty washing over her. She hurried to close the distance and suggested her mother extend her visit, mentioning that since she had no school the next day, they could spend more time together. His mother faced her, a gentle smile lighting up her face as she clasped his hand in hers. The moment had finally arrived for them. No matter what unfolded, someone would be waiting at home, preparing a warm dinner. The hustle and bustle of large cities felt overwhelming, so returning to a quiet, simple life in there seemed perfectly acceptable. She quietly placed a small pouch into his hand, mentioning that she had nearly forgotten about it. Inside the pouch was a modest amount of money, which she insisted should have since she had no use for it herself. Without hesitation, she made her way toward the train, reassuring herself that there was no need for concern. She felt confident that, should any trouble arise, the neighbors would be there to lend a hand. They suggested replying with letters only and advised against sending any money, urging the recipient to hold on to it in case the post office misplaced the funds. Let out a quiet sigh as she slipped the pouch into her bag, silently agreeing with her mother's words about the confusing ways of big cities. In a swift motion, she seized the pickpocket by the wrist and wrenched it forcefully, breaking the bone with a sharp crack. She exited the station, leaving him in a state of shock. She looked out over the crowded streets with a sly smile, knowing that was the very definition of complicated. That evening, arrived back at the campus to find the main gate closed. She rushed over to the guard, quickly trying to clarify the situation by mentioning that a traffic accident had occurred, causing the tram to be delayed for more than 30 minutes. They sprinted all the way back, fear gripping them tightly. Worry filled their thoughts. If they were late 3 times, the Thorns' punishment would be unavoidable. 3 strikes would mean being expelled. After hearing her gentle, sorrowful request, the guard finally decided to open the gate and allow her to enter. Had long understood that attractiveness could open doors for her, but it was only upon arriving in that she discovered just how much influence beauty truly held in this place. In contrast to the hardships of her impoverished village, she noticed that people in the city, with their refined manners, were far more eager to offer favors to someone with an attractive appearance. She deeply appreciated the Star Law Lord, whose leadership had brought wealth and sophistication to the Star Nation, allowing her the opportunity to enter the world of the elite. Had she come into the world in a more savage land, she could have been claimed as a prize by some ruthless warrior years before. She expressed gratitude toward her mother, reflecting that if she had spent her youth toiling in the fields, her own beauty would have been dulled, leaving her with the rough appearance of a country girl. As she approached her dorm room, the sound of conversation coming from within reached her ears. The clock showed it was already past 7, and it seemed clear that the stray wouldn't be returning that night. The person realized the pretense was over at last. She had gotten involved with a wealthy benefactor instead. Paused at the doorway, realizing that she had arrived just in time to overhear the typical round of post-friendship gossip that always seemed to follow a roommate split. She hadn't appeared in class, nor had she tried to catch the attention of any boys. To them, she was just a rural girl with little to offer besides her looks. They wondered what made her so special beyond her pretty face. Had mentioned witnessing leaving the school grounds around midday to meet with a woman who appeared to be a peasant. It was likely that this woman was mother. To some, it seemed fitting. One might say a trashy daughter came from a trashy mom. In the middle of sharing gossip, abruptly swung the door wide open. Both girls inside reacted with startled shock, their bodies tense as if they might leap from their seats. One of them happened to be who shared the apartment. Often seen following was the other one, found herself in conflict with these two more than anyone else. Known as the merchant's daughter in town, often treated with disdain, she would boast about her appearance and subtly mocked for her modest background. Despite anything might say, whenever she and were seen side by side, it was clear that far more boys were drawn too. Always managed to stand out and overshadow. After landed the position as the event host on campus, abandoned any attempts to hide her resentment. From that point on, began to flaunt her wealth openly. She often arranged gatherings for the water arts department, generously covering the costs for upscale dinners, yet she consistently left out of the guest list. Because of this newfound attention, an increasing number of boys began pursuing, though the ones she showed interest in often raised eyebrows due to her unusual preferences. The senior, she insisted, she had truly developed feelings for came to mind. He had encountered only for a short moment. a boy immediately became infatuated with, and wasted no time in expressing his feelings to her. Immediately rejected his offer without hesitation. She couldn't help but think that if he wasn't even good enough for a wandering dog, there was no reason she would be interested in him either. Romance had no place in her busy life. Her sole focus remained on, and she was determined to stay right where she was. Despite her rural background and recent success on the entrance exam, building a life independently might require years of perseverance. She hoped to meet a respectable man who could help her quickly enter the world of the elite. Her intentions could not be more straightforward. She is determined to master the art of water magic. She had carefully gathered the facts, discovering that more than half of possessed water magic. The percentage rose above 70 if their husbands also practiced magic. Clearly, being a water mage gave women a significant advantage when it came to marrying into nobility. University might not hold the #1 spot, yet it is highly respected for producing skilled magi who specialize in swordplay, as well as those who command the elements of water and wind. Anyone who completes one of those 3 tracks will secure their chosen future. The girl's mother learned that she had graduated from and possessed the abilities of a water magus. The speaker believed she was the ideal choice for their family, fitting perfectly the image of the daughter-in-law they had always hoped for. It was common for those skilled in water magic to pursue healing, as their abilities included powerful recovery spells. Most wind magi eventually became weather magi, often finding themselves laboring outside in tough weather. Sword magi were often seen as too muscular, which usually worked against women who wished to pursue that path. Goals had been set in stone. She needed to call forth her first water spirit within the next year. If everything went according to plan, she also aimed to reveal the silver wing and achieve the 1-wing rank before finishing school. She then set her sights on sneaking into the events at Truth Magus University, believing this would offer her the perfect opportunity to capture the attention of a noble heir. Truth University stood as more than leading institution for magic. It reigned as the Star Realm's most esteemed academy, brimming with wealth and influence. Believed her destined partner would be found within its grand halls. In contrast, she considered the boys as unworthy of her attention. She hoped that everything would work out so she could become part of the aristocratic class through marriage. She relied on her husband's network to amass her own wealth, and even after their marriage ended, she remained confident and prosperous enough to welcome her mother into a life of luxury. While drifted through her idyllic daydream, a sharp, icy voice interrupted her thoughts, insisting that she had to practice with the sword instead. The end observer stood there, his voice cold and detached. He suggested that anyone in this situation should begin by noticing how those around them responded. The person explained that anyone wishing to communicate with them only needed to form their thoughts silently in their mind. Looked around the room, realizing that none of the other girls in the dorm had seen him. A shiver traveled along her back as she wondered about the stranger's true identity. The figure introduced themselves as the final observer, suggesting that the observer would suffice as a name. Noticing the others' forgetfulness at such a young age, the observer hinted that it might be wise for them to regain focus and avoid unnecessary distractions. The speaker assured the sword maiden that there was no need for alarm, emphasizing that he meant her no harm. They felt as though they had become just a faint echo of yearning, no longer whole or truly themselves. The conversation quickly ended, as the speaker insisted they return to their tasks. The end watcher magically produced a small vial, appearing as if from nowhere, and instructed that the potion must be consumed first. Quickly shook her head, her disbelief clear as she silently rejected the idea without hesitation. Before she had a chance to respond, he swiftly emptied the contents. The fluid rushed through her veins, flooding her body with its intense presence. The end watcher pulled out a wooden sword and pointed it in her direction, making it clear that he expected her to be ready for some sword training. Tightened her jaw as she fought against an unfamiliar impulse. She shook her head and responded with unwavering certainty. Despite her resistance, she found herself unable to overcome the urge. Grasping the wooden sword, she stepped out of her dorm room. Within the sword training hall, focused intently as she continued working through her practice routines. She struggled to catch her breath, fatigue clearly weighing her down. She looked over her achievements with a bright smile, realizing she was nearly at the edge of the 9th ring. If she continued at her current speed, she would arrive at the 10th ring before the month ended and call forth the spirit of her blade. At that moment, entered the hallway, gripping a wooden sword tightly in her hand. Everyone in the room instantly shifted their attention in her direction. A voice quietly expressed astonishment, questioning why the individual was present and noting that they were known as a water type. Offered no reply, as she drove her sword directly into the practice dummy. His gaze sharpened as he observed closely. He noted that her dominant hand trembled, her other hand lacked strength, her movements with her feet were unsteady, and her whole body responded slowly. In his assessment, none of these habits met the standards he expected. He believed that for a girl who aspired to become one who aimed to summon spirits and perfect her skills, her physique needed to be conditioned with even greater discipline than that of most men. To prepare would require toughened hands, strengthened limbs, and solid core muscles. The question lingered in the air, challenging her readiness for such demands. She warned, her voice laced with mischief, that the girl's prospects with men would decrease. Then she speculated aloud, wondering if a man was involved, and hesitated, hinting that she might have figured out the truth. Was a first-year student renowned for his exceptional sword skills. As the heir to a prestigious noble family in the Starlight Nation and the son of a prominent member of the Starlight Council, everyone expected him to attend the esteemed Truth University. However, he had unexpectedly decided to enroll at university instead. The Duke of, who was also called the Star Forger, oversaw the country's top steel factories, extending his reach into the military, business world, and government. He stood among the most influential figures in the nation. The speaker reflected on the man's reputation, recalling how he had personally witnessed the man's flirtatious behavior. For 5 consecutive days, new girls had shown up at the training grounds searching for him. The speaker also remembered being warned before about how risky it was to get involved with someone like that. Paused to consider, deciding that if it inspired a passion for swordsmanship, perhaps it wasn't such a negative thing after all. Another companion shared a passion for mastering the sword. She suddenly realized something astonishing. Her hand was already grazing the edge of the 1st ring. Even though only a few minutes had passed, she wondered if might have practiced beforehand. On closer inspection, she moved with unrefined motions, each swing exhausting her as sweat continuously streamed down her face. Despite her fatigue, every blow matched the precise techniques outlined in the swordsmanship manual. Moving at this speed, she was bound to collapse within minutes. Training couldn't be productive under these conditions. Shivered as a familiar coldness crept over her. She had made previous attempts at this challenge. The highest number she had ever reached was 256 swings completed within 11 minutes. As the minutes ticked by, the crowd's astonishment intensified. With 96 minutes already gone, curiosity spread among them as they wondered aloud about the current number of swings. A person who had been keeping track from the beginning announced that she had reached 1,700 swings when her sword struck the 7th ring. Although there was a moment when they lost count, they estimated that she was now close to 2,400 swings. At that moment, who was both's upperclassman and his girlfriend, entered the room. She assumed the commotion had come from, and wondered if he had finally managed to call forth his spirit. She was already weighing her options, wondering if they should mark the occasion at the club's Golden Harbor bar, or simply return to his place to enjoy some time together. To her astonishment, Intel stood nearby, observing the scene. He stared at, sweat gathering on his brow, his gaze fixed and unblinking. Approached the group, curiosity evident on her face, and wondered aloud about the cause of their intense focus and nervous demeanor. Quietly remarked to himself that he hadn't realized someone so beautiful had joined their swordsmanship department as a junior. Concealed her disdain, recognizing that although the girl appeared to have no makeup on, she was actually sporting a perfect, first love, look meant to appeal to every man's heart. Given her appearance, it was clear her interest was solely in, leaving no chance that she would try to take someone else's boyfriend. Looped her arm through and flashed a playful grin, questioning the group's motives for observing the training session, hinting that it was because of the girl's attractive appearance. Clarified that, because the listener was not enrolled in swordsmanship, he would keep his explanation straightforward. He pointed out that just 90 minutes earlier, she had been a complete beginner, unable to grip a sword the right way. She was now able to slice through the 9th ring with just one blow. His eyes grew wide with shock. She wondered if the girl was pretending, unable to believe what she had just witnessed. After all, had trained for months and despite being better than most, had managed to reach only the 2nd ring. Found himself in disbelief, even though he had witnessed every moment unfold. He had expected her to reach her limit at some point. Yet, as 90 minutes passed, the envy he once felt gradually shifted into genuine respect. His words came out gentle and honest, surprising even further. She knew he usually showed little respect for his father and brother. Now, though, he was quietly watching a girl for over an hour, something that deeply unsettled as it hinted at trouble. For the full 90 minutes, the girl known as a hunter had pushed herself relentlessly, refusing to pause even once for a break. The average person would feel exhausted and have to stop after practicing for only a short while. Even, who was known for his remarkable talent, could manage no more than 3 hours of training, taking short rests here and there to recover. It became clear why this team, reliant solely on sheer strength in their training, had been completely overwhelmed. Felt a heavy weight settle in her chest, wishing she had been born a man. The graceful and intelligent upperclassman achieved a score of 80. Within's heart, emotions stirred. At that moment, renowned for her unmatched swordsmanship appeared. The woman possessed a flawless beauty, scoring a perfect 150, and her appearance was nearly impeccable. There was absolutely no possibility of coming out on top. At that moment, sword landed perfectly in the middle, earning her a full 10 points. All movement ceased as a heavy silence settled over the group, their shock leaving them speechless. Suddenly became aware of her surroundings, startled by her own actions. She had executed a flawless attack. Even if she made no further moves when the opportunity arose, she would be able to activate a resonance using her understanding of the realm, call forth the spirit of a sword technique, enter the realm, and transform into a mage with wings. She wondered if her wish to spend the rest of her life, free from concerns about hunger or financial struggle, was truly about to be fulfilled so easily. At university, only about half of the students managed to graduate, as becoming a mage was no easy feat. Those who succeeded as winged ether mages found themselves destined for bright and promising futures. At that instant, his gaze sharpened as she realized she had just heard the observer's voice. She quickly turned her gaze in its direction. A peculiar scene unfolded as an empty potion bottle hovered near his shoulder, seen solely by her eyes. The moment passed, and the observer's dark silhouette appeared behind. With an icy and emotionless tone, he reminded Sword Maiden that her task was not over, and she still had to overcome this opponent. His expression grew somber as she leveled an accusation at the onlooker, claiming they were taking advantage of her. The observer remained calm, showing no sign of surprise. He explained that the situation was simpler than it appeared, as he was merely setting up a match for the other person. The strongest opponent available just happened to be that particular individual. The observer assured that the person's status or background was irrelevant to his decision. A sly grin spread across his face as he considered the idea. If the opponent really was a noble, that would be even more entertaining for him. He found great satisfaction in seeing nobles lose their pride. He imagined that if victory was certain, it would be amusing to humiliate the noble further, perhaps by stepping on his face or delivering a playful smack. Rumor had it that certain nobles from the starboard side were notorious for their odd tastes. His expression darkened with displeasure as she wished they would choose another person, making it clear she wanted no involvement with it all. The observer cocked his head to the side, his expression marked by clear confusion. Had observed him in the past, recognizing that there was something both unusual and threatening about him. Had always stood out among the noble heirs at university for his approachable nature, so it was only natural that she considered him a possible target. His reputation as a playboy was hardly the main issue. The true challenge came from his complicated family ties and the infamous group formed by his former girlfriends. People whispered that was like a walking legend, supposedly attracting around 10 different girls every single day. Despite his many opportunities, he had never allowed a girlfriend to spend the night. He resided in a villa away from the school grounds, departing right after evening practice each day. He would always be seen behind the wheel of his unique silver Gallop Tiger, a car that no one else at the school owned. He changed girlfriends almost as often as changing shirts, never once introducing any of them to his family. Doubted that anyone could end a relationship so quickly. This realization brought her to a new understanding. Did not pursue relationships out of desire, but instead treated dating like a peculiar pastime, accumulating girlfriends as if he were assembling a strange collection. Because the son of Duke had enrolled at the school, it was difficult for anyone to ignore the possibility that he had become entangled in a political conflict. In stories, situations like this tended to follow a familiar pattern. A person like him would usually fit the role of the classic noble antagonist, exactly the sort of individual everyone would be wise to avoid. The observer arched an eyebrow, silently questioning whether causing a confrontation with the other person would only lead to complications for the one being addressed. Gave a determined nod, showing her full agreement with what he had said. The observer's next words left her completely frozen in place, as if she had been turned to stone. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The expectation was clear: create chaos, seize every chance to shine, and defeat anyone foolish enough to challenge them. After all, wasn't this the very opportunity they had always longed for? His eyes brimmed with unshed tears as she questioned herself, unable to recall a time when she had ever desired something so immature or self-important. Before she had a chance to object, the observer interrupted her. The observer expressed hopes for her success in her initial fight, encouraging her to defeat the renowned swordsmanship genius and to take the opportunity to humble a noble as well. Reacted at once, lifting her sword and aiming its tip directly at. Renowned as the prodigy within the swordsmanship department, stood out among all students at university. To the challenger, was the sole person deemed worthy to become the foundation for their spirit summoning. With confidence, the challenger questioned whether had the courage to confront them in combat. The crowd burst into excitement, amazed by what they witnessed. They wondered if they were seeing the pride of a real genius on display. The girl boldly issued a challenge, making it clear she was ready to compete. Felt a wave of disappointment wash over her as realization struck. It was obvious now, had set her sights on as well, and she had relied on one of the classic foolproof schemes to capture Dam's attention. While attempted to step in, she noticed that had already been practicing without pause for 2 hours. Concerned, urged her to hold off on any duels until the next day, believing needed a break. Responded by shaking his head, silently insisting that the event was unfolding at that very moment. In just 2 hours, a novice had managed to deliver 3,600 strikes, progressing from basic technique to the brink of sword mastery. It was a display of talent unlike any witnessed before, so impressive that it filled the observer with awe and even fear, making this individual only the second person ever to inspire such a reaction. He realized that if he didn't agree to the challenge right then, he might lose all his nerve by the next morning and wouldn't even be able to face his opponent with his sword. He understood this could be his one and only opportunity to win. Unbothered by accusations of exploiting the other's fatigue, the character remained determined. To them, winning that night meant holding on to both the justification and the bravery needed to continue pursuing the one they admired. The family had a legendary reputation for their exceptional skills with the sword, mastering 4 hidden techniques that could call forth a spirit. Among these was the wave stance. Within their sword tradition, each stance served not only as a method for practice, but also as a way to invoke spirits and as a powerful move in battle. Without warning, became aware that she could no longer command her own movements. She objected, questioning the purpose of a battle where he pulled all the strings. No matter the outcome, she realized any victory would truly belong to him, leaving her as nothing more than an observer in her own struggle. Resigned, she acknowledged that if his goal was to manipulate her every move, she could do nothing to stop him. The character proposed a deal, suggesting that if control was returned to them, they would willingly engage in battle. They assured that facing a single opponent would not be a problem, and even offered to challenge two adversaries at once, hoping this offer would be convincing. The observer offered a subtle smile, questioning how the other person had come to believe that they were the one in command of their body. The notion that someone might believe an opponent was chosen at random seemed almost amusing, as if it were possible to overlook the obvious signs of their presence. Despite feeling exhausted, the urgency to act pushed them forward, knowing this moment offered a real opportunity to become stronger, and realizing that too much time had already slipped away. She had pushed herself to her limits, using up every ounce of energy, all in the hope that someone would see her efforts, especially her roommate. She possessed more than mere beauty. Her skills were something to take pride in. The decision to confront remained a mystery, leaving others to wonder about the reasoning behind choosing him as an opponent. From the instant she laid eyes on him, a deep sense of dislike took root within her. The instant he cruised down the campus road in his gleaming silver Gallop Tiger, he became the focus of everyone's attention, soaking in the admiration radiating from the crowd. From the very first instant he captured everyone's focus, jealousy and envy took root within you, causing a deep dislike for him to grow. He regarded them as nothing more than a beginner, someone familiar only with the simplest techniques from the swordsmanship guide, despite the fact that their abilities his own. He still possessed the upper hand, thanks to his noble family's wave stance. The battle intensified, fueling Sanger. She could not understand why others seemed to have every advantage from birth, or why they always surpassed her in every aspect. Struggled to keep his footing, shock evident in his movements. He couldn't believe that she continued to meet his every strike with equal force, and he wondered where she found the strength to keep going. In a heartbeat, his energy intensified as he himself to deliver his most powerful attack, determined to finish the battle with one decisive move. Amidst the bustling crowd, the observer gazed at, a look of satisfaction on their face. In their mind, they reflected that Sword Maiden was finally beginning to realize the truth, that everything unfolding had its roots within her own heart. Had been the one to seize the wooden sword, her determination clear as she walked boldly onto the training ground. It had been her own desire to challenge him, her own ambition driving her to prove that she was just as capable as anyone else. Positioned herself confidently, and his eyes grew wide as he recognized the wave stance. The audience erupted with excitement as they witnessed her adopt the wave stance. Observers doubted she could have mastered such a technique merely by observation, suspecting she was intentionally challenging her opponent. The situation felt unbelievable to everyone watching. Jealousy flared within as she watched. The huntress's impressive abilities made it clear she intended to embarrass, ensuring he would always remember her. Realized that if the huntress lost now, it would only give a reason to accept more challenges in the future, offering her even more opportunities to be near him. Let out a furious roar, blaming for her own disgrace. They believed they were just as capable as everyone else. In the blink of an eye, their swords collided with intense force, causing his wooden weapon to break cleanly in half. Everyone's attention snapped to his shoulder, where a ghostly presence had appeared. Gradually, a spectral figure took shape over his shoulder, revealing itself as the spirit of the wave sword. In the midst of the fierce clash, a remarkable moment unfolded. One fighter managed to call forth their life-bound spirit right on the battlefield. Such a feat seemed to embody the true legacy of the family. Raised his voice, encouraging not to give up hope. He assured her that before long, she would be able to call upon her spirits just as she wished. Despite the situation, remained composed and asserted that she was still in the game. Two students studying swordsmanship exchanged hushed words, each trying to maintain a confident front. Despite their bravado, there was an endearing quality to their stubbornness, as their pride refused to let them back down, a common trait among prodigies. In the following moment, his wooden sword shattered into pieces as well. A wave of astonishment rippled across the audience as an apparition, mirrorings, materialized on shoulder. The crowd exploded with excitement as they realized she had called forth both the family's wave and the sword spirit. Spectators wondered in disbelief if she had truly learned wave technique, adapting to his fighting stance in the middle of battle and unleashing it right then. The idea seemed unbelievable to everyone watching. If this were indeed the case, Then she had advanced from a mere student of swordsmanship to a true within the span of several hours, accomplishing overnight what most people needed years to achieve. Within the bustling crowd, the observers' lips curled into a contented smile, clearly pleased with what they saw. Came to the understanding that the observer was simply a creation of her own imagination. The character recognized that the figure before them existed only as a manifestation of their thoughts, a mere illusion conjured by their mind. His outline slowly dissolved until it was no longer visible. Right before he disappeared entirely, he signaled with his hand and challenged them to figure it out. Inwardly, seethed with unspoken resentment toward him. Just then, a notification from the system announced that the Mad Sword Maiden had advanced to a higher level and unlocked a new ability called Wave Sword. Ash could barely contain their excitement, feeling a surge of triumph at leveling up. Even though they had no idea what a one-winged sword master was, Ash remembered that the person who defeated them before had 3 wings. It seemed clear to Ash that having more wings must be something important and impressive. He exhaled slowly, feeling satisfied. Waking up at 6 in the morning to monitor his training had proven valuable. His dedication was finally showing results. Ash searched for the promised 30% boost in shared recovery EXP, but nothing seemed different. There was no noticeable increase in strength, no unexpected wave of energy, and no dramatic change in abilities. The anticipated transformation simply didn't happen. The /terminal observer operator interface remained exactly the same as before. He wondered if he had fallen victim to a scam, considering he hadn't paid anything yet. His suspicion grew, especially since his own family's company was notorious for designing games that forced players to spend money if they wanted to participate. At that moment, a sudden glow appeared on the back of Ash's neck. A message addressed to Ash Heath stated that the registration for Smashed Lake Prison was finished, granting him permission to walk within the approved zones. The message referenced an included guidebook for navigating Smashed Lake Prison. It also informed Ash that meals would no longer be brought to him, and he would now need to go to the cafeteria to eat. Upon hearing those words, he noticed the prison gate beginning to swing open, leaving him confused about what was happening. He hurriedly opened the inmate handbook and scanned its pages. It described the hours when inmates could move around freely, from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, and listed the places they were allowed to visit. Central Hall, the reading room, gym, media room, Ocean View Terrace, and a couple's room were all mentioned, each stocked with necessary supplies. The guide also detailed the locations of the workshop and cafeteria, along with the dining schedule. Breakfast was served from 7 to 9, lunch from 11 to 2, and dinner between 5 and 8. For times outside these windows, it noted that meals could be ordered through a special service. The reading room required visitors to notify the administrator if any books were missing, promising that new copies would be delivered in 3 business days. In the media room, only officially purchased programs were accessible, and movies would only be available for viewing after their theatrical release. In the couple's room, guests needed to put used items in the recycling bin instead of cleaning and returning them on their own. The amount of freedom given seemed unusual, making it feel as though someone might be playing a trick on the newcomers. Ash sensed that when things felt this strange, there was always a hidden drawback, and she was determined not to be deceived. As he pondered the situation, a sudden, unmistakable rumble from his stomach reminded him that he hadn't eaten. Hunger gnawed at him. After considering his options for a short while, he chose to get something to eat quickly before returning immediately. He reassured himself that nothing would go wrong while he was away. As he exited, he realized the hallway was completely empty, with no guards in sight. He stepped inside a spacious hall filled with lively activity. No matter where he turned his gaze, he saw prisoners wandering around without restraint, appearing nothing like individuals deprived of their liberty. Ash noticed a guard relaxing nearby, absorbed in a game. Feeling unnoticed, Ash experienced a wave of comfort. At last, a guard was present, someone he might reach out to for assistance. He remained without the sword maiden's skills, making him completely useless in a fight. Lacking any combat talent, he also carried the mental exhaustion of someone burned out from office work. Without someone strong to guard him, he doubted whether he could even hold on to his self-respect. With a sense of calm settling over him, he set out to find the cafeteria. As he made his way forward, he caught snippets of conversation between two men glued to the news. They marveled at how had managed to secure a position as a counselor, and noted that he was now part of the Immortal Wine Club. This shift, they remarked, meant Scroop now held more influence than the mayor. It seemed clear to them that the mayor wouldn't even see his term through before being replaced. A peculiar man disagreed, expressing his belief that Mayor enjoyed the support of Bishop. He insisted that the others would soon recognize this fact, and he argued that recent success did not signal a win for. His fate was sealed, had established deep ties in over many years. The church would only take action against him if their sense of order was truly threatened. At that moment, Ash heard a voice call out from behind, reminding him of the railway commissioner's suicide that had happened 15 years earlier. Turning around, he noticed a group of orc prisoners with green skin and a goblin inmate deep in conversation about major changes in the political landscape. A blonde-haired man approached, revealing himself as someone surprisingly invested in the local government affairs despite being the head of a four-pillar god cult. Ash shifted to face the man, who went on to explain that he certainly recognized Ash. He mentioned that Ash had appeared on the front page and the 7 o'clock news for the past 2 days. According to the man, the news was the quickest way they learned about newcomers. It was their first time meeting face-to-face, although there was a chance the other person had already recognized him from television reports. His name was Boking. Ash introduced himself with measured politeness, expressing that it was nice to meet everyone. He then wondered aloud if friendliness was a common trait among the group. Hoke and Grind consistently welcomed newcomers with open arms, believing that everyone there was united by common dreams. An invitation was extended to consider joining the Prison Break Research Group, where members supported one another. Ash's eyes sparkled with excitement. The timing couldn't have been better. He had been searching for an opportunity to escape, and now he saw a group already prepared for him to become a part of. At that moment, a girl interrupted with a chilly tone, suggesting that in her place, she would have struck him across the face. Ash listened closely to the voice, and realized it reminded him of someone he knew. He wondered if it might belong to the Sword Maiden. In an instant, he launched his fist directly toward Boking. Right before his fist could make contact, the system flashed a crimson warning, announcing that too much physical force was being used against a civilian. It repeated that such behavior was not allowed. His clenched hand halted abruptly, suspended just a few inches from Boking's face. Boking let a sly grin spread across his face, silently amused by Ash's gentle attempt at a punch, which he found endearing in its harmlessness. He observed that the other person seemed to be adapting well to life behind bars and decided not to interfere. With that conclusion, he turned his back and left. Ash let out a long breath, relieved to feel movement return to their limbs, confusion swirling in their mind as they tried to make sense of the strange experience. The Sword Maiden spoke with a chilling tone, explaining that there was no reason for anyone to be shocked. She clarified that the miracle chip implanted at the base of the neck had sensed a threat and instantly transmitted a signal to the brain, taking over the body just long enough to stop the assault. The technology had become a common tool in managing livestock, yet its effectiveness appeared even greater when applied to people. Ash stood in shock, unable to comprehend the situation. Confusion filled Ash's mind as they wondered why they had been instructed to strike the other person. Despite the limitations on combat and magic in this place, there remained numerous clever tactics that could be employed. As an example, one might use a spirit to seal an agreement. The speaker believed that the man in question carried heritage, noting that excelled at harnessing psychic abilities. Had the listener accepted the man's proposal and clasped his hand, it would have been equivalent to entering into a binding contract. Forming such a friendship would require supporting one another. However, in this situation, the obligation to assist would fall solely on her, while receiving any help in return would depend completely on his willingness at the moment. Realization dawned in Ash's eyes as he understood the situation. If he had actually shaken the man's hand, it would have meant agreeing to become his worker. No, even worse, his unpaid intern. She suddenly remembered that no one else was able to see him. The Sword Maiden responded with calm indifference, explaining that she was willing to continue the conversation in this manner, provided he didn't care about the curious looks others would give him, as if he were behaving strangely. The realization dawned on them that she truly was the infamous Mad Sword Maiden. She confirmed her identity as the Maiden with a smirk. Spotting the observer, she found it hard to believe he had ended up somewhere so low, even though she witnessed it herself. Amusement sparkled in her eyes as she silently wondered if she could mock his current state. The character expressed clear annoyance and questioned why the other person was not dressed in the same clothes shown in their illustration. The other person walked confidently, dressed in the standard-issue Supreme Smash Lake Prison Classic inmate outfit. They looked nothing like the version of themselves they had created in their own artwork, so they had no right to criticize anyone else's creations. The Sword Maiden straightened her posture, emphasizing her pride, and made it clear that, as a woman, she would never settle for wearing the same unwashed clothes day after day. Upon noticing Sword Maiden Doraemon's presence, the speaker requested her assistance in escaping from the prison. She let out a laugh, questioning his desire to leave when he already had shelter and meals provided for him. In her eyes, someone like him belonged right where he was. She wondered aloud about his eagerness to go, suggesting that life beyond these walls could be even harsher. The idea of retiring early and finally enjoying the comfortable life, always imagined, began to linger in their mind. The character realized they had been framed, and with the Blood Moon trial approaching in just a few days, they couldn't help but think it hardly sounded like an invitation to a feast. The Sword Maiden let out a quiet laugh, her eyes glinting with amusement. The mention of the Blood Moon trial seemed to entertain her, and she felt even less inclined to offer any assistance in escaping. The master insisted that such an action was not allowed, firmly reminding the other person of their position of authority. Her face hardened in an instant, and a red light flared in her eyes as she demanded to know what he had just called her. She pressed her finger firmly against his forehead, demanding to know what he had just said and challenging him to clarify his threat. With every jab, it seemed as though steam threatened to burst from his brow. The speaker accused the other person of wanting to be called Master, expressing disbelief and irritation. They sarcastically suggested that perhaps repeating the title would give the other person even more material for their inappropriate fantasies. Ash's expression grew somber as he silently questioned whether there was anything wrong with that. The player reminded the virtual character that their existence depended entirely on the game's progression. The player explained that if the player failed or died, the character would simply vanish. Given such a connection between them, the player wondered aloud why the character wouldn't be willing to assist. Ash responded with a chilling tone, making it clear to Mad Sword Maiden that he was neither her master nor her servant. Unable to see herself being treated as an equal, she thought he might as well return to the game world and exist as nothing more than data. The Sword Maiden pivoted gracefully, her tone serene as she acknowledged her nature. She accepted the truth of being a virtual entity, admitting that she existed only as an imagined shadow within the digital world. The observer was reminded of their own words from earlier that day, as the character firmly asserted that the observer held no power over them and never would. The demand was clear, a solemn promise had to be made. If anyone dared to lie, the consequence would be severe, their face would vanish, not to return for 10,000 years. Ash made a solemn vow, declaring that if he was caught lying, he would be doomed to lose his face and would never regain it for the next 10,000 years. The Sword Maiden gestured for him to come along, leading the way as they moved forward together. Despite any intentions to assist, the reality was that offering help simply wasn't possible for them. No one except the listener could perceive or interact with the speaker, who remained completely unable to influence anything in the real world. Given these limitations, it seemed impossible for the speaker to offer any assistance in escaping from prison. Ash blinked in surprise, wondering if the visitor had come just to flaunt their new skin. The character recalled how the other had once spoken about the connection they shared. The Sword Maiden explained that she had come to pass along 30% of the shared experience to the other person. Ash wasted no time throwing his arms wide open and shutting his eyes, his expression completely serious as he prepared himself. She poked him in the forehead once more, clearly unimpressed. In her mind, he definitely wasn't ready. He seemed to believe that, with a snap of his fingers, he would instantly gain all her sword-fighting abilities as if by magic, but she knew it didn't work that way. He stared ahead, his expression empty, while a frustrated heat seemed to radiate from his brow as he wondered aloud how the transfer was supposed to happen. The solution was straightforward. He needed to seek out an opponent. As he fought, the experience would be transferred to him, allowing him to absorb it naturally through the heat of battle. Upon hearing those words, Ash glanced around to take in his environment. The target came into view, a man with a shaved head, tattoos snaking across his skin, and bulging muscles. A distinctive scar cut across his face, giving him the unmistakable appearance of someone who had claimed countless lives before landing in this place. He looked every bit the notorious serial killer his reputation suggested. Ash marched directly to the man and, with clear intent to provoke, tipped over his cup, causing water to splash and drench him. With a sly grin, the character acted as if the mistake had been intentional all along. The bald man's gaze burned with a crimson fury as he straightened to his full height, casting a looming shadow over Ash. Ash himself for a harsh scolding, yet to his surprise, the man's face transformed with warmth and affection. The man gently advised Ash to watch his step while walking around and mentioned that the day's milk was especially tasty, suggesting Ash give it a try. Ash gazed at him in disbelief, completely taken aback. Nothing was unfolding the way Ash had expected. Back in his usual place, the sword maiden was nearly bent in half from laughing so hard. She explained that her reaction was due to her professional training, though sometimes she simply couldn't control her laughter. The prisoners each carried a chip embedded in the base of their necks, preventing them from harming anyone, using harsh words, or hurting themselves. This was the true reason behind Smash Lake Prison's seemingly relaxed atmosphere. Despite the illusion of freedom, every movement and sensation was tightly controlled. The restrictions were so effective that even students were allowed to visit the prison during their spring and autumn excursions. The chips were capable of delivering a powerful electric shock, strong enough to cause immediate cardiac arrest. Anyone who attempted to dig an escape tunnel with a spoon would be incapacitated by the chip for trying to destroy property. Ash's eyes filled with tears as confusion and frustration swirled inside him. He wondered how he could possibly start a fight if the rules prevented prisoners from attacking anyone. The sword maiden lost her patience, urging that they should simply find an opponent because fighting was the most straightforward thing in the world. She wondered aloud whether the observer was losing control or if it was her instead. Then, with a hint of sarcasm, she questioned if the next thing would be the observer calling her Mommy whenever he got hungry. In the following instant, Ash called out for his mother and grandmother, an action that instantly ignited the sword maiden's anger. She struck him with such force that he was sent tumbling through the air. Ash crashed forcefully against the back of the bald man. Ash introduced themselves and asked the other person for their name. The stout, round man believed himself to be important. He gestured toward himself, making it clear that he was already in a relationship with someone. Ash trembled, feeling misunderstood. Their intention hadn't been what was assumed. They only wanted to ask something. When the bald man noticed, a bright expression appeared on his face as he reassured Ash that he understood completely. He explained that encountering someone like himself, who was upfront about already being committed, must make things incredibly uncomfortable for Ash, especially if Ash was trying to show interest. The bald man spoke with sincerity, expressing that his feelings for his boyfriend were sincere and untainted. He made it clear from the beginning where he stood. Although he treated others with kindness, he would not accept any hint of doubt about his intentions. Ash had always been a kind person, and others noticed this about him. There was a sense of confidence among his friends that one day he would discover someone special meant just for him. There was nothing for Ash to feel ashamed about. Everyone fumbled when flirting sometimes. If Ash needed more time to come up with a follow-up question, patience would be granted. Still, it was hard not to notice how Ash's attempt to get attention had been painfully obvious. Spilling milk on purpose just to start a conversation was something more suited to children, not high schoolers. Ash restrained a sharp reply, and instead straightforwardly inquired whether there was a way to fight. The bald man arched an eyebrow, clearly recognizing someone unfamiliar to the area. He seemed to understand they were new and guessed they might be searching for a way to test their strength, assuring them they had found someone who could help. Introduced herself as a part of the club, explaining that the group had special approval from the warden. She revealed that, during sanctioned matches, the members' chips could be shut off for a short time, allowing them to battle freely, a unique advantage reserved only for those in the club. Ash's eyes grew wide with shock as the realization set in. There was a club in the prison where inmates were expected to fight until only one survived. It became clear to Ash that the prison permitted its inmates to kill one another in these deadly matches.